Welcome back. 365 Sports. Zach Barnett hatless today. I think this is the first time we've seen Zach Barnett hatless. Alito must have a bye week.
You know, it's funny. There's two reasons for that. One is I finally got a haircut and took a shower before I went on. Oh. And two, Alito does not have a bye week. They're at Denton Ryan, and we are on our way up north in about an hour. But I thought I'd be more neutral today.
Zach, Arkansas opened up this week. In your estimation, how good of a job is that in the current landscape?
Toward the bottom. I think it could be towards the middle. Like, I don't see any reason Arkansas can't be Missouri or South Carolina or the good years of Kentucky or even Ole Miss. It's never going to be Texas A&M, Oklahoma. I traded messages with a coach that I fully expect to be involved in that search in one way or the other. And I'm just kind of feeling his thoughts out on the matter. Speaking hypothetically, you know, if they were to call you, what would you say? And it was basically like, tell me what your NIL number is and your rev share number, and then I'll tell you how interested I am. And I certainly don't expect that to be unique to this job or to that coach by any means. But what I find interesting about this job in particular is Arkansas, to their credit, is doing everything they can to be an everything school, not just a football school and a football conference. They've got a national championship quality baseball program. They've got a basketball program they've invested heavily in, and to their credit. And I think if their AD, their Hunter Yurchek, tried to have that conversation with the fan base and they weren't having it, say, hey, we don't have the resources right now to win a national championship of football, but we have it in those other two sports, and it went over like a lead balloon. And so the other part of that conversation is, guys, do we want to take all the resources away from baseball and basketball to maybe win 9 games at max in football? Like, that might be the reality for us. Or we could be a 7-win football program, but be in the Sweet 16 and maybe beyond in basketball and go to Omaha in baseball. I think most people would rather take that, even if it's not fun to come out and admit. So I think if they go out and are getting the type of interest in your Rhett Lashleys and your bigger names like that, then they're willing to play ball. If not, then we know kind of where Arkansas sees itself in football.
Zach, has that become the number one question over the last year or so when you talk to coaches? Give me their NIL number and their rev share. Is that just kind of what has that replaced as what the first questions used to be when you talk to coaches about potential openings?
Yeah, it used to be salary pool. Because obviously you can't do it alone. And obviously that's still important. But now it doesn't matter what coaching staff you have. You need players to win. So, yeah, that's certainly it. And if you're in the NFL and the New England Patriots had a salary cap of $250 million and the Cincinnati Bengals had a salary cap of $50 million, Cincinnati Bengals job wouldn't be a good job. So it's very much that, except the salary cap in college football is varied from school to school and hidden from public view, and isn't that fun?
Zach, do you expect Billy Napier to make it deep into October now that there's already an SEC job open, and Kentucky could come open too if the wheels continue to kind of spin out of control there?
Yeah, I think of all the jobs that are swirling out there, there's not a single job where the Sharks would be more ravenous and swimming in the waters more quickly than Florida. And I think Florida knows that. They've got a roster that's too good to be 1-3. So I think they're going to give Billy Napier the opportunity to save himself, and that might start Saturday afternoon. They've got receivers back healthy that haven't been there. If they could figure out the deep ball, which is about like if I could figure out how to jump 40 inches, that seems about as realistic. But if they can figure that out, then they can rally. And you certainly don't want to move on from Billy Napier. He's well liked there. He's a good man. He's built a good roster. You have a quarterback that, in theory, could be the number one pick in the draft 2 drafts from now, and you'd rather see him in blue and orange for his entire college career. So I don't think they're in any rush to move on, and I think they're willing to give Billy as much rope within reason to show why he deserves to keep this job. Having said that, and I'm not saying I expect this to happen, but if they're down 28-0 in the third quarter on Saturday afternoon, I think Florida's among the most spoiled fan bases in college football, and they won't hesitate to make their voices heard, either literally or through empty seats, and you could see quit factor come in. And then when those two things happen, schools make moves quickly.
So got some games I want to ask you about, but first, and you can just answer this, just no, and I'll move on and ask you about a game. Is there anything that you've heard of interest or any different from last week when we talked to you in regards to the Oklahoma State job?
No, to be honest, I haven't heard anything that I feel like would be worth bringing up right now.
Sure. Okay, cool. Yeah, just didn't know what else floating out there that might be of interest to our audience, and certainly we're going to keep close tabs on that one. But all right, let's get to the games. As the coaching news is going to be out there constantly, but we do have these things to play. And starting off with Vanderbilt Bama, man, this is a game that I never thought in a million years up until last year that would have this type of attention surrounding it, but that's the Diego Pavia factor and just the job that Clark Lee's done. How much you buying into Vandy having Bama's number? How much are you buying into how good Bama's looked since that early season loss? What do you make of this game?
Yeah, it's a little bit weird because all the reasons that you and I and all of us are talking about, the reasons to like Vandy of they did it last year, that Alabama has historically, even under Nick Saban, has struggled with mobile quarterbacks, and certainly those struggles have continued under the direction of Kane Womack. Vanderbilt has added another dimension to their offense that wasn't there last year. They were, for all their success offensively last year, they were in the hundreds in yards per play. They ground people down. What they did to Alabama is they just stayed on the field and protected their defense by keeping them on the sideline. This year, they've added an explosive element to their offense that I had the numbers in front of me, but they're, I think, top 30 in yards per play. They're hitting the explosive passes that they did not last season. However, if we're aware of this, certainly Alabama is. And it wasn't you and I that got embarrassed by Vanderbilt last year. It was Alabama. And we could sit here and say, well, if this was an LSU team, if Vanderbilt was wearing LSU's uniforms, then none of this would be surprising. And they'd be ranked in the top 10. But the fact of the matter is it is Vanderbilt, and they beat Alabama. And I have to think that Alabama's players and coaches have enough pride to not allow that again. Especially at home where Alabama's 9-0 under Kalen DeBoer. So I'm not saying I don't think they're going to blow them out or anything. I think Ty Simpson is playing Heisman Trophy quality football since the Florida State loss. I think Vanderbilt stays within the 9-10 points, but I think Alabama ultimately wins.
Florida State and Miami. Florida State loses last week on Friday night against a very improved Virginia team. Does this mean that you're out on Florida State, or do things change when they get back home?
No, I think they can win this game, but I think they have to win it a little bit unconventionally. I think Florida State needs to realize that they're going to win this game by grinding down Miami's defense and keeping their own defense off the field. So, having said that, your path to win this game is 35-28, not 17-14. So I think the worst case scenario, if you're Florida State, is a 12-play, 80-yard touchdown drive that kills 6.5 minutes. I think you're much better off with a 3-play, 80-yard touchdown drive that takes a minute and a half, and then your offense is back on the field with a chance to return volley and kill 7 minutes on your own. So I think if you're Tony White, Florida State's defensive coordinators, I think you need to take a lot of calculated risks and think, yeah, we might get beat over the top here for a touchdown, even though Miami hasn't really thrown the ball deep well so far. But we're going to throw some numbers at where we think the ball's going, and if we're wrong, they might score. But if they're right, we'll force a 3 and out, or we'll force a turnover and get our offense back on the field. I think Mike Norvell's really good at taking those calculated risks and playing to win and not without a fear of being blown out, whereas Mario Cristobal much more coaches, whether by purpose or by accident, coaches to keep games close. So I could definitely see Florida State winning this game. The problem is if they lose, now you're 0-2 in conference play. Your Alabama win has gained a lot of value, but you kind of got to become Alabama football fans because the rest of your schedule is not planned out. And I'm not sure if just simply beating Alabama and not even making it to the ACC championship game would be enough to put you into the playoff.
I think we're all relatively in a similar age bracket. We were talking about this a couple of days ago. Where is FSU, Miami, and like your nostalgia rankings of growing up being a college football fans and the great rivalries that you kind of lean on?
Yeah, I came of age like early 2000s, so I didn't watch those early 90s games live, but as I educated myself on the sport, I understood the implications of them. And then it seemed like every Saturday from the early 2000s, it was like the whole season was decided on within 1 6-hour window where you'd have Florida State, Miami at 11 a.m. our time, and then you'd have Red River at 2:30. And it seemed like Miami and Oklahoma always found a way to win those games. And those two never actually played for a national championship, but it seemed like whoever won those two games was going to meet for the national championship. So I definitely think it's great that this game means something again. I think it's funny that Clemson, North Carolina is also on Saturday because the ACC had big dreams of this being the ABC block at 3:30 and 7:30 Eastern. And Clemson, North Carolina have one Power 5 or one FBS win between them, I think.
I had thought about that, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You know that the Jim Phillips is just like, man, October 4th is going to be great.
Well, yeah. Clemson beat Troy and North Carolina beat Charlotte. And then that's it, right? For the two of them?
Yeah. North Carolina has a win, I think, over Richmond or someone. It's not an FBS team. So whoever wins will get their first Power 4 victory.
Wow. Yeah. Not how they dialed it up, I don't think there. Zach, are you buying into Texas being in a little bit of trouble in the swamp this weekend? I know we touched on Napier early, but are you buying into that concept at all?
I've seen a lot of people talk themselves into an upset, and I'm not going to sit here and say it cannot happen because certainly it's hard to have confidence in what you've seen offensively out of Texas. But I think it takes a leap of faith to think that Florida is going to score enough points on this Texas defense. They're going to fix themselves in a bye week. Like if you can, DJ Lagway, I think is 1 for 7 throwing the ball down the field. So to think that they're going to fix that or they're going to put together 7, 8, 9 play drives to score enough, I don't think is going to happen. I think Florida's going to need a whole lot of help from Texas, either with coverage busts or turnovers in their own territory or both to go out and win this game. Could those things happen? Yeah. But I think the numbers I've seen, the various analytics give Texas like a 75% chance to win. I think that's fair.
Are you buying that Iowa State's in trouble against Cincinnati this week? Probably the biggest game in the Big 12.
Yeah. The Iowa State wins. I was impressed by their Arizona win, but they beat Iowa, who's not as good as we all thought they were going to be, and they beat Kansas State, who's not as good as we all thought they were going to be. And the Big 12, as we know, is a conference where you have even your best teams are 6-3 in conference play. So yeah, I can absolutely see them lose this game. In fact, I think on our website I picked Cincinnati to win this game.
Yeah, man, I think this is you got Iowa State missing their top corners as well. So who do you like outside of Texas Tech? Who do you think is the second best Big 12 team that you've laid eyes on so far?
It's not Utah. I like Arizona State as a team, but they're playing. I mean, there's nothing wrong in a vacuum with playing Mississippi State close on the road, with playing Baylor close on the road, with playing TCU close at home. But doing that consecutively and not putting yourself distance between any one of those three teams tells me that they're going to get got at some point. TCU's inability to run the ball on the road at Arizona State's hard to have confidence in that. So I think by process of elimination, I'm going to go BYU, even though they have a true freshman quarterback, and the Big 12 is a conference of veteran quarterbacks. But as of right now, that's who I would say.
What does Houston have to do to get the upset? Like, how much do they have to just empty the whole bucket on both sides of the ball to slow Tech down?
I think you need to win turnovers by at least 2. And I think you need to find ways to – I think you need to take points when you can get them. I don't think like if it's fourth and 3 from the 20-yard line, I just take those points. I think you need to – I would say you need to find ways to neutralize that Texas Tech defense, especially that front that absolutely swallowed up Utah in that game. But I'd say the first and easiest path is you got to win turnovers by at least 2. And I think as weird as it's going to be, I think there's going to be more red and black in that stadium than there is red and white or red and Houston Oiler blue. So I think you need to give your fans confidence that you can go out and win this game early, because if Tech gets up early and with how confident that football team is right now and how jacked up the entire Red Raider Nation is, If it's 14-0 early, Tech, I don't see Houston rallying from that at all.
Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com. They are the place to go for coaching information for sure. You wrote the last thing that you wrote this week was Whit Babcock says that the new coach may split responsibilities or power with the GM. Do you think that is something that he'll maybe be the first to kind of experiment with in making it more of like an NFL model?
No, I mean, Stanford has explicitly done that. When they said that they hired Andrew Luck, they said he's going to the head coach will report to him. Obviously, they've since changed head coaches for off the field reasons with firing Troy Taylor. But Andrew Luck will be the boss, and the next head coach at Stanford will report to him. Cal has set it up the same way. I think it's largely dependent on the head coach, and Babcock came out and said that they're going to hire a head coach first and then get a GM. So I think there's certainly going to be a negotiation there. I don't think it's wise to say, all right, we're going to hire a head coach. This is going to be your general manager. Although they've done that at Oklahoma, and so far it's worked well. Mileage may vary, but I think you're going to hire a head coach. The GM, I think, will probably work hand in glove. But I think really it boils down to how much tenure and power the head coach has at that given institution and how those three, be it the head coach, GM, AD, their working relationship. So I think it's fluid in most places.
Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com. Zach, talk to you next week.
Thank you.
All right. That's Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com. And Craig, I was going to ask about A&M and Mississippi State, but we'll talk about that game ourselves here. But this is not the marquee week for college football, and those weeks are going to happen. Now, granted, Clemson, North Carolina, like you mentioned, being an absolute lemon of the game,